How's everyone this morning? Good? Yeah, great. My name is Amy Gerard, and I am here as a parent. I have a daughter who experiences Angelman syndrome. I live with Allie, my husband Chuck, and Josh, who is 18 and in college. We live in New Hampshire, and I am really excited today to be here. I'm very honored to be able to moderate these sessions for FAST, and I'm really looking forward to an exciting day of presentations today. And what I'd like to do is I would like to introduce Lara and the rest of the speakers as we move forward in the day. Communication is extremely, extremely important, as we all know, in individuals with Angelman syndrome. And so one of the things that I'm hoping that we can gather from today's presentations and take back to our communities is how important communication is for our children and our loved ones with Angelman syndrome. And communication it takes place in a variety of ways. And so we're going to learn all about best practices with communication and individuals with Angelman syndrome. So with that, I would like to introduce Lara Beauchamp, and I apologize, I need to read this without my glasses on. Is a senior speech language pathologist and assistive technology specialist at Playworks Therapy in Arlington, Virginia. Lara has more than 12 years of experience working in both adult and pediatric rehabilitation, providing evaluations and therapy to clients with complex communication needs. She is well versed in developing speech-language feeding plans of care involving family members and associated professionals to ensure an interdisciplinary and holistic approach to practice. For the last 8 years, Lara has focused primarily in augmentative alternative communication, or AAC. In this capacity, she administers AAC evaluations, offers speech-generating device recommendations, and drafts AAC letters of medical necessity. Lara is dedicated to AAC across the lifespan, always thinking long-term and understanding that communication and AAC are constantly evolving. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Lara.
Thank you, Amy. That was lovely. Hi, everybody. My name is Lara Beauchamp. I'm thrilled to be here presenting to all of you about AAC evaluation best practices. Let me just make a little note here really quick. There we go. So in an effort to fit a significant amount of information in a short period of time, we may have time for questions at the end, but I'll definitely be staying here after to chat and answer any questions that you may have. So just a really quick agenda for what you should expect for the next 45 minutes. I kind of just want to give you a holistic view of what to expect in an AAC evaluation and really what to expect along the process as a whole. So let's see. Okay, so let's first talk about who should be involved. In an AAC evaluation, we always take a team approach. A team approach allows for collaboration and transparency from the beginning. We want to work together toward the same goal, which is to support our loved one to communicate efficiently and effectively. So at a minimum, the AAC team members need to include the child or individual with a communication need, key communication partners, which can include caregivers, partners, family. Hey, maybe the brother or sister will come along too. A certified speech-language pathologist who is the lead professional in the AAC team evaluation process and likely to provide the subsequent AAC intervention as well. So that's me, by the way. The individual's doctor, who will end up drafting the prescription needed if it is needed for a device trial and purchase through insurance. The physician will not physically be there, but should be looped in about the evaluation as soon as possible, just to facilitate a trial or a purchase as quickly as possible, so keeping everybody in the loop. So it goes without saying that a definite bonus would be if a collaborating professional can attend, such as an occupational therapist or physical therapist. But at the bare minimum, the speech therapist is the one that should be helping lead the way. So I want to ask you all, what are the prerequisites for using AAC? I don't know if you can guess by the picture, but there's only one, and you need to be alive. You need to have a pulse. So essentially, there are no prerequisite skills for using AAC. You don't need to match an object to a picture, nor push a certain number of buttons. There's no right or wrong answer in an evaluation. We presume competence, and we use our evaluation to plan our intervention toward effective symbolic communication. I love this quote, which states, "Students should be served based on their unmet communication needs. Communication is a basic need and a basic right." Okay, so let's talk about static versus dynamic evaluations and where AAC evaluations fit on that continuum. There are two types of evaluations. Static assessments identify how an individual is currently performing. If the evaluation happened today, it would be how they're performing on this date. While dynamic assessments make informed decisions about an individual's current and future needs. Our goal is for AAC to grow with your child, so AAC evaluations are always considered dynamic. So because of this, we want to engage the child and have fun in the evaluation. It's all about motivation and choices. What are his or her key interests? Let's choose materials and activities that excite the child. We want the child to feel empowered and joyful so that we can facilitate meaningful, high-quality interactions. So, what is the child doing now? So in order to look ahead, some of my first questions at an initial appointment are related to past and present communication. Essentially, what are they doing now? What has worked so far and what hasn't? If a child or an individual has a current system, what are the benefits and barriers to usage? So to clarify, AAC encompasses a huge umbrella, including unaided and aided communication. And what I mean by that is aided communication has no hardware and is always available for use. So we're talking, for example, gestures, eye contact, body language, and sign language are examples. Whereas aided symbols, we think about our speech generating devices. We think about picture communication systems, words, and symbols. Oops, sorry about that. Got a little ahead of myself. We also want to just take an inventory too. Maybe there are multiple systems being tried across different settings. Maybe we have picture exchange going on in the school. We're in individual therapy where we've been trying different options. So it's just nice to get an inventory of all the devices being used so that we can kind of think ahead as to how we can better meet needs or meet the needs best looking forward. Okay. So, we are in the evaluation appointment and we have our next step, which is a capabilities assessment. We're basically just taking a close look at a child's level of performance in critical areas pertaining to AAC intervention, including seating and positioning, vision and hearing, motor skills and access, cognitive communication, speech, language, and symbolic thinking. So, again, what I want to emphasize is we're looking for the strengths and skills, not the impairments. These capabilities help determine the AAC system that the individual needs. Okay. All right, so let's talk about seating and positioning. Seating and positioning is super important because this allows the team to accurately access cognitive, language, and motor capabilities. So picture this. How difficult would it be to write if you tried to write without resting your forearms on the table? Or why is it so hard to sit for long periods of time without resting your feet on the floor? Well, that's because in either example, our seating is neither symmetrical nor stable. So that's where we really need to start. Let's ensure a stable base of support so we can maximize energy for AAC access. So, a question for all of you. Which body part do you all feel is our base of support? Does anybody know?
Core.
Okay, here the core, the feet.
Our bottoms.
our tushies. So it's our pelvis, so around the area. So the pelvis is our base of support, which supports the lower extremities, supporting the trunk, upper extremities, neck, and head in that order. So as you can see in picture A, the pelvis is not centered on the back edge of the seat. So this is the picture in the upper left-hand corner. And we see where the breakdown occurs. The trunk is less stable. We see rounding in the shoulders. There's decreased neck and head control. And in picture C, which is in the bottom left, the child's feet don't fully touch the floor, which cause the legs to hyperextend and creates increased tension in the trunk, arms, and shoulders, which ultimately we're really thinking about fatigue. So it's our job in the evaluation to provide temporary supports. We're thinking about permanent solutions moving forward or solutions that will grow with a person. But when we use rolled towels or foam blocks or straps in the evaluation, we're just trying to facilitate proper alignment so that the person has the most energy possible to access communication. Okay. Here we go. All right, here are two loves of mine, Annika and Sophia. We've been working together for 6 years, and there's never a dull moment. They are always keeping me on my toes. So these pictures show what I'm talking about, ideal, what we call 90-90-90 seating. So let's start from the bottom so I can explain what I mean. Their feet are flat on the floor at 90 degrees. Their knees are bent at 90 degrees, so the chair seat length is appropriate. Their tushies are to the back of the chair, which creates a 90-degree angle at the hip. These angles are supporting a straight back and a straight posture, which ultimately support energy and visual motor attention to AAC. But I want to clarify, this is what we consider the gold standard for seating, and I 100% recognize that children may benefit from different customizations depending on their tone or contractures. So, a lot of times what we will do is, especially in any evaluation where I'm unsure about seating and positioning, I love to take videos and send them to a collaborating professional like an OT or a PT, or even, anyone that's been working with them previously that may shed light on what seating has worked best for them based on their individual needs. Okay. All right, so next up is vision and hearing. And, this comes directly after seating and positioning because it's obviously directly related to how we access AAC. Now, this is an interesting one because we really want to make sure, if possible, that the family obtains updated vision and hearing assessments before the evaluation, just so we can get an updated understanding of how to accommodate them with regards to accessing AAC. So visual skills inform decisions regarding symbol size, placement, spacing, and colors, while hearing can inform decisions regarding voice output needs, any auditory feedback that may be helpful, speech rate, as well as pitch. Okay, so next up is to assess motor skills and determine a person's most reliable access point for using AAC. Motor skills include a person's strength, range of motion, tone, basically how are they able to voluntarily access AAC. We usually keep the task simple because we don't want to maximize the cognitive demands here. We just want to see which body part is going to be the most reliable for using an AAC system. And typically, we start with the finger, we go to the hand and the arm, and if those are unreliable, we usually do the head or a facial feature followed by foot and leg control. So here we go. I've got a video here. So here's Orion. He's always on the move and brings joy to everyone he meets. So let me show you a short clip of him completing a direct selection task, which is basically assessing motor access for accessing a device with his right index finger. So let's see if this works. Oh, hold on. I think I lost the cursor. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay. Good job, dude. Keep going, you got it! Yay, good job, dude. So short video, but basically, as you can see, he's using his right index finger and he's activating all the quadrants of the screen, but also notice he's not working too hard. Endurance is a huge part of AAC access, so we're glad to see that we have him properly seated and aligned, and that's prevented fatigue. So remember, if you can't maintain proper alignment, fatigue will definitely interfere. Okay, so the next step is cognitive communication, and it's all about your child's understanding of the world and how it impacts his or her communication. So basically, how is your child reacting and responding to his environment? To conversation partners? How can AAC better facilitate communication within his or her specific understanding? So we typically test this formally or informally, but we're just really looking to pinpoint where and how a child is communicating in daily interactions, which provides a great framework for moving forward in AAC planning. Okay, we're flying by, this is great. People are candidates for AAC intervention if their natural speech is not sufficiently functional to meet all of their daily communication needs. So essentially, how effective is your child's speech for communicative interaction? I want you to think about this very simply. You know, we think about speech versus language. Speech is simply verbal output. How is your child or your loved one communicating verbally, and are we able to understand him or her? How many sounds does he or she use? How understood is he or she to family and friends? How about people that don't know him or her? When speech is significantly limited, it's our job to find the AAC solution to facilitate that effective communication. So as a speech therapist, when we're drafting our evaluation, we really want to take a clear inventory of all the phonemes and sounds the child's producing, and just highlighting if the verbal repertoire is significantly limited, really how it's impacting that they aren't able to get their point across and show us what they know. Okay. All right, here we go. So next we take a look at a person's language. Language skills include the following. So we have receptive language, which is auditory comprehension, expressive language, social skills or pragmatics, and symbolic thinking or representation. And symbolic thinking is the understanding of the relationships between symbols and their reference, or the actual items they represent. So formal or informal, the goal of a language assessment is not to assign a score to the individual, but to gather information that's needed for the intervention planning. It also may shed a light on the discrepancy between what they understand and what they're able to show us without proper access to communication. When a child presents with significantly limited verbal speech, the language assessment often shows that gap between the language concepts they understand and the language concepts they can express. So let's bridge this gap. So one of the questions we answer in assessing language is this: what types of symbols will meet the individual's current and future communication needs and abilities? So I'm going to show you a video because I want to give you an idea of what symbolic understanding looks like in its basic form, which is with real objects. So let's take a look at Carson as I present familiar objects to him and observe. Try to get that cursor on. There we go. Look at all the toys. What are we gonna do? Delicious. Yum. Can I have some?
Want some?
Yes, please.
Alright.
So good.
All down.
Thanks, Carson. So So as you can see, Carson used these items functionally. He was drinking from the cup, he was mixing a spoon in the cup, and took it one step further by pretending to give me a drink of water. So this is symbolic understanding at its basic form, which are foundational skills for symbol use. So we want to highlight that. Okay, so the capabilities assessment is complete. Now that we've completed the performance piece of the evaluation, we want to compile the performance across those areas to choose a device to trial and feature match. So feature matching is when we match the features of a system based on the strengths and needs of the user. The child and his or her family should definitely be a part of this process. So features can include system preference, voice type, screen and icon size, colors, and vocabulary. In this picture, Orion's talker, so Orion is in the middle there, is lightweight and portable. A key guard has been placed to facilitate ease and efficiency of access. We've chosen a robust vocabulary such that the vocabulary shown to him can communicate a wide variety of interactions and also is personally relevant to him. And we want vocabulary that's going to grow with him, so we're going to follow it. It's also important to take into account a family's ethnicity and culture as it pertains to system selection. People of different backgrounds may have different preferences, and so it's just really important just to be mindful of that and to follow up. Okay. So once a device is matched to the user's needs, a trial or practice with AAC technology is then completed for a designated period of time. This is between about 4 and 12 weeks. So this depends on your insurance and state of residence, and I'm sure many of you may be familiar that coverage is constantly changing, but it is the responsibility of your speech pathologist to help you navigate this system. So don't be afraid to ask questions and expect that they're going to help you lead the way. A trial process allows the AAC team to identify specific components, features, and tools necessary to meet the individual's communication needs. As a team determines the strengths and weaknesses of one option, another option may prove to be a better fit and worth trialing as well. So it makes sense to take time and consider multiple options if needed, because the pros and cons are all great notes for us to move forward when we decide to select something. So upon completion of a system trial or set of trials, the goal is that the team members reach an informed consensus on the optimal system. So I will say it's not uncommon for family and friends to have different opinions regarding systems. But I think, mindfulness and thinking about the long-term goals, especially when we're doing trials, and taking as much data as possible as to how performance is happening across different environments and conversation partners. The end goal is that we're trying to find something that is going to best meet our child or the individual we love. So I think at the end of the day, communication is a basic need and a basic right, and we want to meet those needs. And this went a lot more quickly than I thought it was going to, so I have time for questions if anybody is wanting to ask something. But yeah, thank you all for being here. This was great.
We have some time for
super
some
fast.
questions.
So my question is, I have a son, 28 years old, who uses his iPad for watching YouTube and all kinds of stuff like that. And I do have GoTalk Now on it, but he doesn't want to use it. Is it really important to get a separate device for communication? Or can we incorporate the communication device and his fun device together in the same unit?
That's a great question. So what she was asking is that should you have a device that's dedicated solely to communication, or can have the ability to access different applications for fun and leisure? Ideally, I think, for my professional opinion, it's always best to have the communication system as its own separate entity, because then the child or the person is always associating it as a communication device. There's obviously some interesting caveats there, like if you're trying to access your environment, some of these systems have a lot of like home controls where you can turn lights on and off or activate the TV, but those are all embedded within a system. So I would say if you're able to have a system that's specifically dedicated to a child's or your son's communication, that would ultimately provide the best results, because it's consistent and it will always be there for that sole purpose. So there's no question. So yeah, I think a separate device is ideal if possible.
Great, thank you. We have another question over here.
Yeah.
I had a question regarding the target practice. So we haven't started using the system yet, but I think that would be awesome for my son. So was that an app or is that a part of the device, or what is that?
So the video I showed was part of PRC's Accent hardware and software, but there are actually different apps on an iPad that can work toward target practice that are either free or of low cost. So actually I could probably make a list and make that available. But yeah, the nice thing is iPads now have so many apps that have the opportunity for us to evaluate access without that specific program. But yeah, essentially that one was part of the PRC system. So we have options though with iPad apps too as well. Thanks, Amy. You're gonna get your steps in today.
I'm not quite sure who was first, so we'll go to this table and then back over here.
Lara, what happens if you have a language system that you just don't think is the right language system, and you're thinking about moving to another language system, but you have multiple parties involved in this, between school, multiple therapists, including the speech therapist?
Yeah, so I think when I was talking about the dynamic assessment piece, we're really thinking about AAC across the lifespan. And obviously, as I said, when we were thinking about moving forward with trials and decision making, it's very easy for me to say, like, we will all reach an informed decision and we will all agree on the same system and everyone will live happily ever after. But I think that the more transparent we are in constantly monitoring what is working and what's not, because things are constantly changing as we grow and as we gain more language and more experience in our world. Our needs are going to change, and we want to constantly be reevaluating that. So an AAC evaluation, as I said in the beginning, is not just one appointment, and I think that the more that we can facilitate a conversation to check in about how things are going, we can't prevent the, dissenting opinions, but at the same time, they might bring in a perspective that we haven't considered. And, especially coming from where I come from, where I may only see a child for a couple hours a week, taking into account a professional that may be a part of their day for 6 to 8 hours, that is valuable. So I think, it's easier said than done to always be on the same page, but I think the more that we can check in and be open about what is and isn't working and have like the same collective long-term goal, and just sort of harp on the fact that AAC is about communication and empowerment. We're not looking to make it a teaching concept, and just continue that education process. Hopefully we get that transparency going. So yeah, it's a journey. Hi, Amelia.
Hi. Lara, thank you. This is really helpful. I have a two-part question.
Okay, tell me.
So first part, what we found at our house is that often, like, screens are so appealing to siblings and to everyone, that often siblings will steal the AAC device and try and use it, which is wonderful, like great modeling, right? But at the same time, we want the device accessible to our child with Angelman syndrome.
Yes.
So that's the first question, like how do you navigate that? But then also, second part question is, involving the siblings in that, how do you kind of balance screen time? Because what we found in our family is that often, if at the dinner table, like, everyone will be focused on their AAC device, you know, instead of actually like focusing on each other, like having a decent conversation with the devices. It's just like, you know, pushing buttons. So how do you kind of balance with siblings in particular that?
Yeah, no, those are both great questions. So I'll start with the first one, which is that there's something called aided language modeling, which is all about modeling on a child or an individual's device as you're speaking on their device. So the fact that the siblings are taking it and wanting to, like, you know, even just explore and see what they hear and react to it and engage, I think is great. And, you know, I think, you know, because kids are always on the move, you know, there's always a graceful way to always bring it back to the peripheral vision of the child who's using it. But I kind of love that. I love that siblings want to explore and want to hear what the device has to say, or, and, you know, even just create an opportunity just to introduce a communicative interaction in a fun and motivating way that's relevant. So I think, like, you know, obviously there's like a song and dance with always trying to bring it back to the child to, so that they can see and hear. But I love that, you know, the whole family's involved. Like, I think that only good things can come from that. And the screen time question, I feel like that's something that we all struggle with, which is how to, like, not be having all the screen time at the dinner table and to be present and to toggle between, you know, engaging, but also, you know, being on all the buttons and all the apps and all the iPads. So, I mean, I think I don't know, that's a tricky one, because I think that at the same, you know, when I think about accessing a device versus like being on my phone or being on an app that's not a language-based app, you know, I think in the end, having an AAC system consistently present within like the direct line of sight of the user, and being able to sort of tie it in with those routines, like that's really what's important. You know, you can't prevent how much, like, you know, the other devices and apps and games and YouTube are going to come in the way. But I think the more that you can have the device consistently present and, you know, be modeling and be in the moment, I think, you know, you're doing the right thing right there. So I don't know, that's a tricky one though, for sure.
Thank you. We have time for 2 more questions. So
Perfect.
just maybe.
Hi, thank you so much. My question is about evaluating really young kids. We have great SLPs and a great team.
Oh, good.
But and they had some Angelman experience, but I found it is super unusual to be walking in with your 10-month-old or your 12-month-old and saying, "Hi, my kid is not going to be verbal. I need high-tech AAC. Which one do I pick?" The evaluation, my child could not interact. I mean, the evaluation was the evaluation of me. And us deciding. How would you, and we did pick one and we've already switched, and so I'm constantly second guessing myself. And we're getting some expressive output, but anyway, regardless, how would you, when you can't really have an effective evaluation with a tiny baby, how would you advise parents to do an evaluation when your child is really too young and not developmentally there to really participate?
That's a great question. And, you know, I think that the research shows that as soon as we have that engagement and relatedness between an infant and their caregiver, or an infant or someone that they are familiar with and love, that's really when we can introduce modeling for an AAC device without placing any huge learning demands. So it's tricky, right? Because we're not able to, you know, see how they access a device, you know, with a body part, but we can, you know, research shows that the earlier we introduce a system, whether it may be the system they use a year from now or maybe just a month from now, at that age, we're really just looking to start introducing AAC and how it can continue the engagement and relatedness, because at that age, obviously, you know, they're so young that we don't want to be placing the demands as to like, oh wait, are they using it with their finger? Like, how are they accessing it? But we do want to like harp on the fact, like, you know what, they're engaging with me. Like, they're looking for like the cause and effect relationship when we're playing together. Or I love the joy I see in her eyes when, you know, we swing or do something fun. And so I think at that stage we're looking at how the child or the baby is relating to caregivers and people that they love, and how we can essentially just start to introduce things and try things versus picking a going back to the dynamic piece, like things are constantly changing and growing. And I think, if like the fact that you're even exploring different options right now is awesome, because you're giving them that robust exposure that, will end up being more effective in the outcome, just even modeling and showing. So, I think, it's easy for me to say, but I think at this point, like, you've already been doing great work by like showing different systems and trying different things, because, we don't want to place the expectations that they're going to use it. We want them to, on their own time, know when they're feeling empowered and have the skills then. So, yeah, I think just really like thinking about that engagement and relatedness and how you can sort of bring it in is sort of where I start.
Lara, thank you. We actually have 2 people that are in the queue for questions, but you will be available after the
Yes, I
presentation
will.
for questions?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay.
Hi, thank you for being here. This has
Yeah.
been really awesome. So my question's kind of on the opposite end. My daughter's just turned 15,
Okay.
and we've had a lot of issues with getting her AAC, wanting to use her AAC through the school or whatever. So my question is, like, actually I'm in Annandale, so I'm really close to where you are.
Yeah, oh, too funny.
But where would we start? Like, do I go to my school speech therapist, or how can I get her a more recent AAC evaluation to get the school more on board with pushing her forward?
So sorry, just to clarify, does she have a current system that is written into her IEP, or?
So we have Pro Loquo to go for her,
Uh-huh.
but she's at school. They're just using like the 8-talker, and they don't have a lot of faith in what she can do. So I just really want to kind of push that, and I feel like at her IEPs they don't really believe in what I'm saying, that she can do as much as she is. So.
That's unfortunate. I think, so the nice thing about AAC is that we're constantly reevaluating. So I think that if you are able to find an outpatient facility or somewhere where they do have access to a speech therapist that can kind of bring in a new, fresh perspective, as we talked about with past and present communication, that's the perfect opportunity in a new evaluation, maybe with someone that you haven't met before, to show the inventory of what she's used, what hasn't worked, what has worked, the barriers that you're running into at school, and kind of getting that fresh perspective. Because a lot of times, I respect the educational system in the sense that, like, I realize they're seeing the child that I'm seeing for, significantly longer period of time than I am, but I know that I'm bringing in a perspective that's not about how much they're not doing, or what we aren't teaching them to do, because, I feel like we're constantly sending home that AAC isn't to be taught, it's to be empowered and to make a person feel like they have the control to say what they want to say, versus being taught to activate certain buttons at a certain period of time. So I would say if you're able to get a fresh perspective and get a reevaluation in an outpatient clinic, I think at least the people that I've worked with locally, we're really motivated to bring school in, because we're motivated for whatever device we feel like at that time fits them best to be incorporated into that IEP, and we want to all be on the same page. I think it'll surprise you that sometimes bringing in that fresh perspective can sort of tie some loose ends and maybe just give some opportunities for things to try.
Great. Lara, thank you so much. And here is our last question.
Okay.
And then we'll move forward to the next presentation.
Hi, Laura. Gabriel. My question for you is about grid size and the initial vocabulary that you give your child when you're first using AAC. There seems to be varying ideas and opinions amongst SLPs, at least the ones we've met, about the size of the grid and how much. I heard in your presentation using a robust vocabulary is ideal, so I know where your opinion is coming from. So we have had experience with multiple SLPs and they've had varying opinions. Is this just are there decisive opinions about what is best for a child when starting off with an AAC?
So the answer is no. It depends on the child. So, as I had said in the capabilities assessment piece, vision and hearing are a huge component to AAC access. So we really try to take into account what they're processing and what they're seeing to help determine the grid size and what vocabulary we choose. The gold standard, should a child have vision and hearing that's within functional limits or accommodated for, we ideally like to present a larger grid size and then have the opportunity for the system to grow with them instead of creating a smaller grid size and having to expand it. Because when we start with a small grid size and we keep expanding the field of the number of buttons we show, we keep changing that motor plan, meaning, we always know where something is when we activate it, but then if it all of a sudden moves more to the left, well, then we've made things less efficient, it's more laborious, and then we may lose interest. So I would say like the gold standard, should someone be accommodated for vision and hearing, is to start with a slightly larger grid size, or as large as they can accommodate. So with that video, with the target practice, a lot of times we're gonna figure out like how high can they go? Like how big of a screen can we go where they're accessing icons in all quadrants? Because then we have that flexibility to bring in vocabulary which I don't know if you're familiar with core versus fringe vocabulary, but being able to loop in that robust system, taking into account like the child's also personal preferences and motivations, but just having a good range of what we can present with as large of a grid size as possible. So it depends on every kid, but I think if we, the larger the grid size, the more flexibility we have. So, yeah. Thanks, Amy. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lara. We really appreciate all of your hard work. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, of course.
So a couple of the takeaways from Lara's presentation, I hope that you got that there are no prerequisites to AAC. None. Being alive. That's your prerequisite. Number 2, AAC is a right, or communication is a basic right. So all of our children deserve an opportunity to communicate in the way that they do best. So I'm so glad that we had that presentation, Laura. Thank you so much. And we're going to take a couple of minutes to organize for our next presentation. Please feel free to stand up, stretch your legs, but don't necessarily leave the room because we want to make sure that we continue in the most time-efficient way possible. So thank you.